So I recently did a video about astrology, why Christians are to have nothing to do with it, and why it's not even real in the first place. And if you haven't seen it yet, I would recommend just going to my page, watching it. It's just a couple minutes long, but I'm hoping that it left you with the probably obvious question, like, why do we still see constellations? So what I want to do is I want to show you not only that they're in the Bible, I want to show you how many times they're in the Bible, and I also want to show you how far back they go and end with why we see them. So you actually see constellations mentioned not once, not twice, but three times. And you also see them mentioned not only by name, but the fact that if you go back and look at the Hebrew words used for them, they had words for them back then as well. So if you go to the book of Amos, chapter 5, verse 8, you actually read talking about God. He made the Pleiades and Orion. And then you travel back to way back to the book of Job, and you'll notice in Job 9:9, we read again, he made the Bear, Orion, and the Pleiades, and the chambers of the south. So two times we read the fact that God made them. We have to keep that in mind, that God made the stars. He put the stars exactly where he needed them to be for them to be in our view. Towards the end of the book of Job, in chapter 38, after Job's done with his friends giving him all the poor advice, God comes into the picture and he starts questioning Job, like, hey, where were you when I built the foundations of the world? And he spends chapter after chapter doing that. Well, when you come to verse 31, God is explaining his power, and right here in verse 31, he says, can you bind the cluster of the Pleiades? Yet again, the same name. And yes, when you follow that in the Hebrew, it is the same name. They had a name for it back then. He also says, or loose the belt of Orion. Can you bring out Mazzaroth in its season? Note that, in its season. That's very important. That word Mazzaroth in the Hebrew can also be used and is used a lot for the word constellations. Or, can you guide the great bear with its cubs? Now, that is a poetic way of saying, can you put the stars in their place in certain times of the year? And that already gives us part of the reason why God has placed them there, if not all of the reason. So when you come to Psalms 19, David actually says that the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament, or outer space, shows his handiwork. It's pretty clear, undeniably at this point, that God created the stars, and specifically some of the constellations, for a purpose. And you have to be honest, the Big Dipper and Little Dipper, yeah, they look like they sound. But when you look at the things like the Aries and the Pisces and all those things, if you can be honest, they don't look the way that those who proliferate that sort of false ideas, this false religion, say they do. They have to make it seem like that. They have to convince you, like we said on the other video, that something is there when it is not. So when you come to Genesis chapter 1, when God's talking about outer space, you'll notice starting in verse 14, it talks about that he said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night. Let them be for signs and seasons, for days, for years. Let them be lights in the firmament of the heavens to get light on the earth. Why did God make stars? Specifically to give light to the earth at certain times. The sun and the moon, same thing. Day in, day out, that never changes. Now, what's amazing about Genesis chapter 1, if you sit and read through it, you'll notice almost every single thing that God talks about specifically has his commentary on it, what it's used for, and so forth. And you'll notice, I'm just going to move myself out of the way, all you see in verse 16, after he makes all his comments about the sun and the moon and everything else prior and everything after, it just literally says, he made the stars also. That's it. He made the stars also, and then he moves on. Now, what you'll find out throughout history, and this goes way back, is if you've ever heard of what's called an almanac, that is something that farmers of old have used for a very long time to tell them when to plant which crops. How'd they do it? By which constellations come out at which time. God taught Adam and Eve, and everybody after Adam and Eve, he taught how to farm. They were already farming. They were feeding themselves when they got out of the garden. And the way that they did that, especially after Noah's Ark, was per season, they would see certain signs, stars, lights, to tell them when to plant what. If we can be honest, no human would just happen to look up at the sky and see certain lights and think, oh, the dipper's out. I should plant some corn or whatever they plant during whichever signs and seasons, right? So we have to be honest about that and know that humans would not just come up with that by themselves. I hope that helped you. I know this is a bit of a long video for TikTok, but you know what? We've got to train ourselves to stop having such a short attention span. It's not good for us. I hope this helped you a lot, though, and I hope you guys like this. Share this with whomever you believe will be blessed by this, and God bless you.